Just to live.
This is honestly. Oh, can we be done with watching Nine run for his life? And then we got our hearts in our throats saying, just get up.
Yeah.
Just get up, run back to the sideline. Let's not talk about a toe. Let's not talk about a knee. Let's not talk about anything like that anymore. Let's just get Joe.
Yeah, but this is why I put a lot of pressure on Zac Taylor. He has to respond better. The Bengals start off historically bad coming out of the gates. And you know when you have a quarterback who's injury plagued, defense, now that you do.
Look, this is something Dr. David Chow on X said. It's a significant knee hyperextension injury with ligament tears. Worry for season-ending injury. Hope he can avoid associated nerve damage. And the way Shemar's knee bent, it stinks. And I'm...
When someone shows you who they are under intense pressure, believe them the first time. In the brutal, unapologetic arena of the National Football League, building a Super Bowl contender isn't just about assembling high-octane offensive highlight reels. It is about surviving a relentless war of attrition. You just heard it yourself from Rich Eisen, national media analysts, and local beat reporters in Cincinnati. The conversation surrounding the 2026 Cincinnati Bengals has reached a fever pitch. But while television executives love selling you the fairy tale dream of Joe Burrow throwing 5-0-yard bombs to Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins under bright lights, the terrifying truth behind closed doors in Paul Brown Stadium is that this franchise is walking on a razor-thin tightrope over a burning abyss. Because when your entire championship foundation relies on a superstar quarterback who has spent half of his career recovering from wrist surgeries, calf strains, and turf toe ailments, one single awkward hit can turn a $30 million dream into an absolute nightmare before the month of August even comes to an end. Let's stop sugarcoating the reality in Cincinnati. The clock is ticking loudly on the Joe Burrow era. Ever since Joe Burrow exploded onto the national stage, leading LSU to an undefeated national championship and bringing Cincinnati to Super Bowl 56, his swagger and ice-cold composure have drawn comparisons to Joe Montana and Tom Brady. Yet, for the last 3 years, football fans across America have watched with their hearts in their throats every time Joe Burrow drops back in the pocket, praying that number 9 doesn't get flattened by an unblocked edge rusher. You heard Rich Eisen say it best. How long can this fan base endure watching their franchise quarterback run for his life? Last season was a painful reminder of how fragile this grand experiment really is. When Joe Burrow missed extended time with a debilitating turf toe injury, the Bengals offense turned into a hollow shell of itself. Yet, despite knowing the risks, front office executive Duke Tobin and head coach Zac Taylor entered this offseason doubling down on the most high-stakes financial gamble in modern NFL history.
Cincinnati, where Joe Burrow spent half of last season on the sideline with his turf toe. He's ready to go this season, where he's going to have to put up big numbers to carry a Bengals defense that gave up nearly 29 points per game last year, third worst in the league. So
when you look closely at how the Bengals' offensive line has performed over the past 4 seasons, the protection metrics tell a deeply troubling story. Despite investing multiple high draft picks and free agent contracts in veteran offensive tackles, Cincinnati's pass protection scheme has consistently ranked in the bottom half of the league in quick pressure allowed. Opposing defensive coordinators know that if they send exotic blitz packages through the A-gap, they can force Joe Burrow off his spot before wide receivers complete their downfield breaks. In a league where secondary defenders are faster and hit harder than ever, asking a franchise quarterback to navigate 50 dropbacks a game behind an inconsistent offensive line is playing Russian roulette with a $100 million franchise asset. Look at the numbers. Because the numbers do not lie. The 2025 Cincinnati Bengals defensive unit surrendered nearly 29 points per game to opponent offenses, ranking as the 3rd worst defense in the entire National Football League. Ever since safety leaders Jesse Bates and Von Bell departed in free agency, Lou Anarumo's defense has suffered a catastrophic loss of communication and physical edge. Game after game last season, Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase would put up 30 points on the scoreboard, only to watch their defensive secondary implode in the 4th quarter, giving up explosive plays to division rivals. When your defense gives up 29 points a night, your quarterback isn't just playing football. He is forced to play hero ball on every single snap. That means holding onto the ball longer, taking unnecessary hits in the pocket, and exposing his body to career-altering injuries.
So my biggest camp storyline, frankly, is the offense good enough by itself to make the Bengals a legitimate Super Bowl contender? And that is not to say that they are not going to try to be the 20th ranked defense in the NFL, but it seems pretty clear, and this is follow the money in the NFL, right? When they paid Chase, they paid Burrow, they paid T. Higgins, they've retained their coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball. Like, they are invested on the offensive side.
The core dilemma crippling this team is a fundamental imbalance between roster construction and financial allocation. In today's salary cap era, you cannot pay top-of-the-market money to every position on the field. Duke Tobin made a conscious brace, calculating choice. The Bengals cut massive checks to make Joe Burrow the highest-paid signal caller in football. They backed up the truck to secure Ja'Marr Chase on a record-breaking receiver contract. They franchise-tagged and extended T. Higgins to ensure their perimeter firepower remains unmatched across the entire league. When Chase and Higgins align on opposite sides of the field, defensive coordinators are trapped in a nightmare dilemma. If you double-team Chase, Higgins wins his one-on-one battle on a 15-yard back shoulder fade. If you roll coverage toward Higgins, Chase takes a slant route 70 yards to the house. On paper, it is an offensive juggernaut that strikes fear into opponents. But in reality, when you pour 90% of your salary cap into 3 offensive superstars, the rest of your roster is forced to operate on razor-thin financial margins. Can an NFL offense be so overwhelmingly dominant that it carries a subpar defense all the way to a Super Bowl victory? Follow the money in Cincinnati. Duke Tobin and Mike Brown have made their answers crystal clear. They didn't invest $50 million in free agent defensive backs or linebackers. They retained offensive continuity, protected their receiving core, and bet the entire farm on Joe Burrow outscoring everyone in the league. But complementary football is not an option in the playoffs. It is a mandatory requirement. When you face Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, or Josh Allen in January, your offense will inevitably hit a cold stretch for a quarter or two. If your defense cannot get a crucial third down stop, your season ends in tears.
Is obviously Joe Burrow, but I'm not going to lead with that. I'm leading with the defense because the whole idea is Burrow going to have to score 90 million points a game or not? And how good can this Bengals defense be? And the Dexter Lawrence trade is front and center in the whole damn thing. They had a 10th overall pick, and
recognizing that their defense was teetering on the edge of complete collapse, the Bengals front office pulled off an earth-shattering move prior to the NFL draft. In a move that shocked draft analysts from coast to coast, the Bengals surrendered their 10th overall pick in a blockbuster trade with the New York Giants to acquire all-pro defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence. Sexy Dexy is an absolute game wrecker in the interior. A 340-pound human wrecking ball who commands double teams on every single snap and disrupts pocket integrity in real time. Passing on elite draft prospects like Caleb Downs or Francis Mauigoa to acquire Dexter Lawrence was a loud, aggressive statement. It signaled that Zac Taylor and defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo know they cannot afford another season of defensive embarrassment. Adding Dexter Lawrence alongside Trey Hendrickson gives Cincinnati a formidable interior pass rush, freeing up edge rushers to get single-block matchups against opposing tackles. But it also drained their draft capital and long-term financial flexibility.
Significant, but if it is, well, defensive end becomes a need for the Bengals. Because you just got to say it out loud. You have Myles Murphy and you have Boye Mafe. Those two were starting. We knew that. At least that was the plan. And then you had Shemar Stewart and Cassius Howe. Well, without Shemar Stewart, Isaiah Foskey replaced Shemar Stewart. You have Foskey.
Yet, just when Bengals fans thought the defensive front was finally stabilized, disaster struck on the very first day of training camp. Day 1 of training camp was supposed to be a celebration of Joe Burrow's return to full health. Instead, a dark cloud descended over the practice facility when former first-round edge rusher Shemar Stewart collapsed during team drills. The sight of Stewart clutching his knee in agony sent shockwaves through the coaching staff. Renowned sports physician Dr. David Chow immediately raised red flags, pointing to a severe hyperextension injury with potential ligament tears. Losing Shemar Stewart for a significant portion of the season, or potentially the entire year, completely wipes out Cincinnati's defensive end depth, beyond Trey Hendrickson and Myles Murphy. The Bengals are suddenly forced to rely on unproven depth pieces like Isaiah Foskey and Cedric Johnson in an AFC North division where you have to physically battle Derrick Henry and the Baltimore Ravens twice a year. Losing edge containment is an absolute nightmare scenario.
How much of a microscope is Zac Taylor under? He's been the coach since 2019. Just do it. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. This is year 8 for him, and you're like, wow, that's a long time.
Dang.
Well, you know who's holding that beer is Marvin Lewis, who is coach of this team for 16 years. If you think Zac Taylor's been at this job long and should have a hotter seat under him, if you think that.
This sudden defensive crisis places an unprecedented level of heat on head coach Zac Taylor. Zac Taylor enters his 8th season as head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. In modern NFL standards, 8 years is an eternity. Many fans in Cincinnati are openly questioning whether Taylor's seat should be scorching hot after back-to-back seasons of missing playoff expectations. But anyone who thinks Zac Taylor is on the verge of being fired simply does not understand the Mike Brown ownership philosophy. Remember, Marvin Lewis coached the Bengals for 16 years without winning a single playoff game because this organization values continuity and stability above all else. Zac Taylor took this franchise to a Super Bowl and an AFC Championship game. His job is safe, but job security does not shield him from intense national scrutiny. If Zac Taylor cannot manage game flow, to protect Joe Burrow from taking brutal sacks, and field a competent team when injuries strike, the narrative in Cincinnati will become insufferable. Navigating the AFC North is unlike any other division in football. In the NFC West or AFC East, finesse and perimeter speed can carry you through long stretches of the regular season. But in the AFC North, against the Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Cleveland Browns, football is a fistfight in a phone booth. The Ravens bring Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry's punishing ground attack. The Steelers bring T. J. Watt and a defense designed to inflict physical punishment. If Joe Burrow and the Bengals cannot establish physical toughness up front, all the 60-yard passes in the world will not save them when December winds blow through Ohio. Furthermore, the psychological toll of past postseason failures hangs heavily over this locker room. Having come within one drive of lifting the Lombardi Trophy 4 years ago, Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase, and Zac Taylor know that moral victories no longer carry weight in Cincinnati. The window for this core to capture a championship is open right now. But every year that passes brings stiffer competition across the conference. If the Bengals falter again in 2026, hard organizational decisions will become unavoidable. The road ahead for the 2026 Cincinnati Bengals is paved with immense opportunity and terrifying peril. On one hand, they possess a generational quarterback in Joe Burrow, a historic wide receiver tandem in Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins, and a game-destroying defensive anchor in Dexter Lawrence. On the other hand, they are navigating a devastated edge rusher depth chart following Shemar Stewart's tragic injury, a secondary that surrendered 29 points a night, and the brutal reality of playing in the NFL's most physical division. Can Joe Burrow stay healthy for 17 games and prove that an elite offense can win it all? Will Dexter Lawrence and Lou Anarumo transform this defense into a top 1-5 unit? Or will another devastating injury collapse the Bengals' Super Bowl dreams before autumn even arrives? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button. And stay tuned as we track every single explosive development in Cincinnati this season. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. What do you think about today's NFL news? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with fellow football fans. And don't forget, the next big NFL story is just around the corner. We'll be back soon with more breaking news, hot takes, trade rumors, and game analysis from around the league. Until next time, stay safe, stay loud, and keep supporting your team.